You've probably been told that real medicine only comes from a lab, that anything growing wild in a ditch, an abandoned lot, or your own backyard is just avate, something to spray, not swallow. Here's what they didn't tell you. Some of the most clinically proven healing plants on earth are the ones you've been walking past your whole life. These aren't folk myths, they're plants named in the Bible. Plants that healed soldiers on the battlefield with no hospital in sight. Plants our grandparents knew by heart long before pharmacies existed on every corner. Modern medicine likes to act like it invented healing. The truth? Science is only now catching up to what scripture and centuries of survival already knew. Today, I'm breaking down 10 of these forgotten plants backed by real clinical evidence that will completely change the way you think about natural healing. Stay with me, because number 7 has been used for over 2,000 years, and modern research just confirmed it fights antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And number 10, it was the original aspirin before aspirin ever existed, and there's a good chance it's growing in a ditch near you right now. Hit that subscribe button. Every day, we post videos that'll save you money and put your health back in your own hands. So let's get into it. 10 forgotten medicinal plants from the Bible, ranked from impressive to absolutely incredible. Number 1. You're lying in a muddy field, somewhere in medieval Europe. The fighting ended hours ago, but the pain hasn't. There's an open gash across your arm, no surgeon, no antibiotics, no sterile cloth in sight. Then a fellow soldier kneels beside you and presses a handful of crushed orange petals straight onto the wound. Number 1 on our list. Calendula, also called pot marigold. Troops carried it into battle so often that it earned a nickname, the war flower. Long before it marched onto battlefields, this same golden bloom held a quieter kind of reverence. Medieval Christians called it Mary's gold, believing its sun-bright petals echoed the halo of the Virgin Mary, a flower considered holy enough for church altars and humble enough to grow in every peasant's garden. Now step into the present, because this is where it gets interesting. Calendula officinalis, still growing easily in gardens from spring through frost, has been put through real clinical trials, and the results confirm exactly what soldiers and worshippers already believed. Its extract measurably speeds wound healing, including burns and surgical wounds, while reducing inflammation and promoting tissue repair. Inside those petals, triterpenoids and flavonoids, natural compounds with genuine anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial power. Infuse the dried flowers in oil, and you've made a salve that heals cuts, scrapes, and burns faster than doing nothing at all. It never got patented. No pharmaceutical company owns a flower, so it just kept blooming, forgotten, in backyards everywhere. Your own emergency room, hiding in plain sight. But if a flower surviving on battlefields impresses you, wait until you hear about the berry that Russian cosmonauts trusted to survive in space. Number 2. Now picture somewhere colder, higher. A windswept mountainside in Tibet, thin air burning your lungs. Nothing around you but rock, ice, and a thorny, unassuming shrub loaded with tiny orange berries. For centuries, healers here and across Siberia and China trusted this plant above almost anything else. For damaged skin and irritated tissue, number 2 on our list. Hippophae rhamnoids, sea buckthorn. Here's a detail that sounds almost unbelievable. Russian cosmonauts carried sea buckthorn oil into space, using it to protect their skin from radiation damage on missions outside Earth's atmosphere. A shrub, tough enough to survive a frozen mountainside, trusted enough to leave the planet. There's something poetic in that. Long before any of this, the book of Isaiah described a barren wilderness bursting into bloom, streams rising in places that had never known water life flourishing exactly where nothing was supposed to grow. Sea buckthorn seems to live that out quite literally. Modern research backs up what those mountain healers already knew. Clinical studies show sea buckthorn oil improves skin barrier function, speeds wound healing, and relieves dry, inflamed mucous membranes, everything from dry eyes to eczema, atopic dermatitis, even post-menopausal dryness. The secret is a rare omega-7 fatty acid, found in both the berries and seeds, supporting mucous membrane health throughout your entire body. It disappeared from Western medicine simply because of geography. It grows where most of us never go. But you can grow it in cold climates now, or take the oil as a supplement and let it heal from the inside, the way most moisturizers only pretend to. Still, if surviving ice and radiation impresses you, wait until you meet a plant that can knit a broken bone back together. Number 3. Imagine you're a field healer generations ago, kneeling beside someone who just fell wrong, an ankle twisted, swelling by the minute. No x-ray, no cast, no way to know how bad the break really is. All you have is a root, some crushed leaves, and knowledge passed down for generations. You pack it directly onto the injury and wrap it tight. Number 3 on our list. Comfrey, Symphytum officinale, nicknamed knitbone, because for centuries, that's exactly what people believed it did. It's hard not to think of one particular scene while learning this. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37, there's a vision of a valley of dry, scattered bones, and as the prophecy unfolds, those bones come together, bone to bone, growing sinew and flesh over themselves once more. A story about broken things made whole again. It's hard to imagine a plant that embodies that idea more literally than the one folk healers nicknamed knitbone. And once again, science backs the folklore. Comfrey root contains allantoin, a compound proven to promote cell proliferation, quite literally, encouraging your cells to multiply and repair damaged tissue faster. Multiple peer-reviewed clinical trials confirm topical comfrey significantly reduces pain and improves function in ankle sprains, abrasions, back pain, and osteoarthritis. One critical note: comfrey is for external use only. Taken internally, it contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids that can damage your liver. But as a salve-dried root infused in oil with a little beeswax, it remains one of the fastest tissue healers nature has ever offered. Modern medicine moved on to casts and x-rays and left comfrey behind. But for the sprains and bruises that happen every single day, this forgotten root still tells your body, quite literally, to knit itself back together, and comfrey is only the 3rd stop on this list. What's coming next might be even harder to believe, because there's a good chance you've walked past it 100 times without ever knowing what it could do. Number 4. Picture a farmhouse a few centuries back, deep in winter. Someone in the next room has been coughing for days, chest thick and rattling, no relief in sight. There's no pharmacy for miles. So someone bundles up and walks out into the frost, toward that tall plant with fuzzy leaves and a spike of yellow flowers, standing stubborn by the roadside. The same plant most of us walk straight past in vacant lots today, without a second glance. Number 4. Mullein. Herbalists once called it the lung's best friend. There's something fitting about a plant built entirely around breath. The very first act of life described in Genesis is breath itself, life entering the body as breath. and only then does the man become a living being. Breath as the line between dust and something alive. It's hard not to think of that when you learn what mullein was trusted to do for centuries. Help struggling lungs breathe freely again. And the science holds up. Verbascum leaves contain saponins, natural expectorants that help you cough mucus up and out instead of letting it sit and fester into something worse. Recent reviews confirm real anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial effects on the respiratory system, not folklore, published research. Traditionally, people dried the leaves, brewed them into tea, and strained it carefully through cheesecloth to filter out mullein's tiny, irritating hairs, drinking it 2 or 3 times a day through a chest cold. The flowers, infused in oil, treated ear infections. It disappeared from mainstream use the moment cough syrups arrived, syrups that often just silence a cough instead of clearing what's causing it. Mullein does the opposite. It helps your lungs finish the job they were already trying to do. Next time you're fighting a chest cold, remember, this plant is still out there in that same ditch, doing the same job it's done for centuries, free for anyone willing to notice it. But clearing the lungs is one thing. What happens when the wound is right there under your feet, on the very path you're walking? Number 5. Now imagine you're walking an old dirt road, the kind travelers have worn down for centuries. When you stumble, a cut opens across your palm, dust already working its way into the wound. No first aid kit in your pocket. But growing right there at the edge of the path, practically under your foot, is a plain, low weed with oval leaves that almost nobody bothers to notice. Number 5. Plantain weed. Not the banana relative, the humble trailside plant. Native Americans nicknamed white man's footprint because it seemed to spring up everywhere European settlers walked. There's a story in the Gospel of Luke that comes to mind here. A traveler left wounded on the roadside, and a stranger who stops, kneels down, and tends to the wound right there on the path, before carrying him onward. Whatever grew along that particular road, the image fits almost too well. Healing found exactly where the injury happened, at the traveler's own feet. And this isn't just a nice story. Modern research backs it up directly. Plantain shows genuine wound healing, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial effects. One clinical trial out of Iran found plantain ointment healed second-degree burns, better than the standard treatment used for comparison. The leaves contain compounds that calm inflammation, slow minor bleeding, and fight off infection. Traditionally, you'd crush a fresh leaf or chew it briefly to break down the cell walls and press it straight onto a cut, sting, or bite. Within minutes, pain and swelling start easing. A strong tea from the dried leaves worked as a wound wash too. It got forgotten for the simplest reason of all. It's common. It's everywhere. We've been trained to believe real medicine has to be rare and expensive, not something pushing up through a sidewalk crack. But for small injuries, nothing is faster. Still, stopping a small cut is one thing. What about a wound that won't stop bleeding? There's a plant for that too, and soldiers have trusted it for centuries. Number 6. Picture a battlefield again, but this time the wound is deep, bleeding freely, and every second counts. A soldier reaches into a pouch and pulls out dried, feathery leaves and small white flowers, packing them straight into the wound. Within minutes, the bleeding slows. Number 6. Yarrow, carried by soldiers through war after war for exactly this reason. Scripture returns again and again to the image of wounds left untended, bruises and sores that go uncleansed, unbound, never soothed with oil, used as a picture of total neglect, suffering left completely untreated. Yarrow stands for the exact opposite of that image. A wound found, packed, and treated the moment it happens, instead of left to fester. Modern research confirms yarrow genuinely shortens bleeding time and promotes clotting with documented hemostatic, anti-inflammatory, and wound healing effects. Here's what makes it rare. Most plants do one job or the other, stopping bleeding or healing tissue. Yarrow does both. It grows wild across North America and Europe, clusters of tiny white or pink flowers on tall stems, with the entire aerial part of the plant considered medicinal. Crushed fresh leaves pressed directly onto a cut stop the bleeding and guard against infection. Dried and brewed as tea, it was also used for fevers and digestive complaints. It faded from everyday use once synthetic clotting agents and antiseptics took over. But for anyone hiking, camping, or working far from a hospital, knowing that yarrow grows nearby, ready to stop a bleeding wound in minutes, is knowledge worth carrying. That's 6. Down 6 plants, already proven to work exactly as history claimed they would. But wait until you see what's coming next, because it might be the one you'd never expect to see on a list like this at all. Number 7. Picture a market stall somewhere along the ancient trade routes of Persia, centuries before anyone had ever heard the word antibiotic. A trader doubled over with dysentery is handed a small wooden cup inside, a tea so bitter it makes his face twist, brewed from bright yellow root shavings. Within days, the fever breaks and the sickness passes. Number 7. And this is the one we promised you at the very start of this video. Barberry. There's a bitterness that runs through Scripture too. At the very first Passover, the Israelites were commanded to eat their meal alongside bitter herbs, a taste meant to be felt and remembered, not enjoyed. Barberry carries that same reputation. Its root is intensely, almost punishingly bitter, and it turns out that bitterness is exactly where its power lives. Berberis vulgaris contains an alkaloid called berberine, one of the most extensively studied plant compounds in modern medicine. This is the plant we teased earlier, used for over 2,000 years, and modern research has finally confirmed what ancient healers suspected all along. Berberine shows real antimicrobial activity against bacteria, including strains that have grown resistant to antibiotics. It also fights fungi and parasites, calms inflammation, and has been shown to help with infectious diarrhea. Recent studies even point to metabolic benefits, including improved blood sugar control and cholesterol levels. Barberry appears independently across ancient Persian, Ayurvedic, and Chinese medicine. 3 completely separate traditions, continents apart, all reaching the same conclusion. The bright yellow inner bark of the root and stem holds the highest concentration of berberine, traditionally brewed as a tea, tincture, or concentrated extract. It fell out of Western use for 2 simple reasons. The shrub is thorny and difficult to manage, and synthetic antibiotics once seemed like the better answer. But antibiotic resistance is now a genuine global crisis, and suddenly this 2,000-year-old bitter root is getting a very serious second look. But if a plant fighting drug-resistant bacteria surprised you, wait until you hear about the one growing in literally every field you've ever ignored. Number 8. Imagine a wide, open meadow stretching out in every direction, dotted with small pinkish-purple flower heads that most people walk straight past without a second thought, just another weed carpeting the ground. Number 8. Reitklor. Trifolium praten ze. This is almost exactly the picture Jesus painted in the Sermon on the Mount, pointing to the wildflowers scattered across an ordinary field and telling his listeners that even Solomon, in all his glory, was never dressed as beautifully as one of these common, overlooked blooms that nobody had to plant or tend. It's a strange kind of honor for something so ordinary, and it fits red clover perfectly. A flower so common, so unremarkable, that almost nobody suspects what it's capable of. Modern research has validated several of its traditional uses. Red clover contains isoflavones, plant compounds with mild estrogenic activity shown to ease menopausal hot flashes. Traditionally, it was also applied topically for skin healing and taken internally for chronic conditions like eczema and psoriasis, backed by genuine anti-inflammatory properties. The preparation was simple. Harvest flower heads from clean, unsprayed areas, dry them, and brew a mild, slightly sweet tea, or infuse them into oil for topical use. But here's the key: traditional detail. Red clover was never a quick fix. It was used over weeks or months, a slow, gentle, nourishing medicine rather than an instant remedy. It got forgotten for the most predictable reason of all. It's everywhere. We've been conditioned to believe real medicine has to be rare and expensive, not something carpeting every meadow you've ever walked through unnoticed. But red clover only heals the body. What about the mind? There's a plant on this list carried specifically for the nights when the body's fine, but the mind won't stop running. Number 9. It's late. Somewhere in an old European cottage, a candle burns low, and someone lies awake, not from pain, not from fever, just from a mind that refuses to stop turning the day over and over. Above the hearth hangs a small bundle of dried purple flower spikes, tied there for exactly this reason. Number 9. Blue vervain and its European cousin, common vervain. Few plants carry a reputation quite like this one. For centuries across Europe, it was known as the holy herb. Christian folklore held that it grew at the foot of the cross at Calvary and was used to help close Christ's wounds after the crucifixion. To be clear, this isn't scripture itself, but an enduring piece of Christian folk tradition, recited for generations in an old harvesting prayer that promised healing for both grief and wound. What's striking is how well that old prayer captures vervain's two traditional roles. Physical wounds, yes, but also grief, tension, unrest. The wounds nobody can actually see, which brings us to what this plant was really best known for: calming an overworked mind. Traditional herbalists called it a nervine, a plant that soothes and strengthens the nervous system, reaching for it specifically for nervous exhaustion, anxiety, tension, headaches, and insomnia. The kind of person vervain was made for: wound too tight, overthinking, unable to switch off. Modern herbal research and some animal studies back this up, pointing to genuine anxiolytic effects, a calming of nervous tension without the heavy sedation of a sleeping pill. The plant grows wild in wet meadows and ditches, tall spikes of tiny purple-blue flowers, with the whole aerial part dried for tea. Fair warning, it's intensely bitter, which is why it's usually blended with gentler herbs or sweetened with honey. Traditionally, a cup in the evening helped people wind down before bed. A cup during the day eased tension without knocking anyone out. It faded from everyday use once pharmaceutical anxiety medications and sleep aids took over. Medications that often bring dependence and side effects vervain never did. Think of it less as medicine, more as an old friend placing a hand on your shoulder and saying, "It's okay to rest now." 9 plants down, And we've saved the biggest one for last. A plant that quite literally became the aspirin sitting in your medicine cabinet right now, long before any chemist ever touched it. Number 10. Picture a quiet streamside meadow in old rural Europe. Creamy white flower clusters swaying above the grass, a scent somewhere between honey and almonds drifting through the air. For generations, anyone dealing with a headache, a fever, an aching joint walked out to exactly this spot and picked a handful. Number 10. The plant we teased all the way back at the start of this video. Meadowsweet, Filipendula ulmaria. There's a line that echoes through scripture whenever suffering needs describing. Is there no balm in Gilead? The prophet Jeremiah's cry. Balm, meaning a healing plant resin, so valued it became a symbol for relief itself. Meadowsweet isn't that balm. Different plant, different continent entirely. But for the people who depended on it, it filled that exact same role, the answer, whenever the question was, is there anything that can ease this pain? And here's where the story turns remarkable. Meadowsweet contains salicylates, the very compounds aspirin is chemically built from. When chemists first synthesized aspirin, they extracted it from salicylic acid found in plants, exactly like this one, alongside willow bark. Aspirin's own name likely borrows from meadowsweet's old botanical name, Spirea. But here's the twist that makes this the perfect note to end on. Isolated, synthesized aspirin is notorious for irritating the stomach. Meadowsweet never was. Traditional herbalists actually used the whole plant to calm stomach inflammation while relieving pain and fever at the same time, soothing the exact side effect modern aspirin causes. Using the very plant aspirin was copied from in the first place. That's the quiet lesson sitting underneath this entire list. We took nature's formula, isolated one single piece of it, synthesized it in a lab, and somehow ended up with something less balanced than where we started. The whole plant did the job better than our best attempt to improve on it. Meadowsweet still grows wild in wet meadows and along streams across Europe today, doing exactly what it's always done, waiting quietly for anyone who remembers it's there. Take a step back for a second. 10 plants, 10 stories. A flower carried into war. A berry tough enough to survive in space. A root that quite literally taught your body how to knit itself back together. Somewhere in the middle of all that, you probably notice something these 10 plants all have in common, and it isn't really about chemistry at all. Every single one of them was hiding in plain sight, growing in a ditch, a meadow, a crack in the sidewalk, a backyard you've walked through 1,000 times without ever looking down. None of them needed a laboratory to exist. None of them needed a patent to work. They were just there, waiting. And maybe that's the whole point. Long before there were pharmacies on every corner, before clinical trials and peer-reviewed journals existed, there was a garden. The opening chapters of the Bible describe humanity placed in that very garden with one job: to tend it, to keep it. And the closing chapter of the Bible ends on almost a mirror image: a tree whose leaves exist for exactly one purpose: healing the nations. From the first page to the very last, the story keeps circling back to the same relationship: people and the earth, and the healing already growing between them, waiting to be tended rather than invented. That's really what this whole list has been about. Modern medicine isn't wrong. It's saved more lives than any of us could count. But somewhere along the way, we started believing that healing only counts if it comes in a bottle with a barcode. That anything free, anything common, anything growing wild couldn't possibly be real medicine. These 10 plants are proof that belief was never quite true. So here's what I'd ask you to do. Next time you're walking past a vacant lot or pulling weeds in your own backyard, take one more look before you rip them out. You might be standing 3 feet away from something your grandparents would have recognized instantly, something a battlefield medic once knelt down and reached for without a second thought. If this opened your eyes even a little, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people trying to take their health back into their own hands. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these 10 surprised you the most. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. The plants were never really lost. We just stopped looking down long enough to notice them. I'll see you in the next one.